Inaugurated in August 2017 and eventually on the 29th of January 2018, the report was submitted. That is the All Progressives Congress Committee on True Federalism, chaired by Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai. A lot of arguments, a lot of debate have been generated as a result of this. Out of 24 items, the committee singled out 13. And the 13 are in the front burner. But the focus basically is not what recommendations that has been there already. Now that the report has been submitted, what next? That will be the focus on this segment of Insight today, the interview segment. And my guest is the Executive Director, Orja Development Consult, Jide Ojo. Thanks for joining me on Insight.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. With the submission of this report by the committee, is it a finality?
No. I mean, it's not a finality. Yes, the 23-man committee on APC restructuring objective was set up in August, as you said in your intro. They've met with over 8,000 people, received 409 memoranda, and they've come out with enlisted 24 items upon which they now made recommendations on 13. Now, the report has been submitted, and last Thursday, and like the chairman of the party, All Progressive Congress, said, the report will now go through the emails within the party structure. That means the different organs of the party, apart from the National Working Committee, must have to endorse it, and thereafter pass it on to the president, who it is believed and hoped will now sponsor some of the bills as executive bills. Recall that the report came in 4 volumes, and actually the committee did a good job by having a draft bills in place. So it's just for the president to send it through the normal channel to the National Assembly for legislation.
Now, when it gets to the National Assembly, what happens?
Well, what happens, again, that's the concern many Nigerians have. Because one would have expected that the party, having come to power, if it's actually duly prepared to govern, and looking at the 8th cardinal agenda that it has set for itself in its manifesto, which is available online, the party within the first year ought to have done this housekeeping to look at what it actually meant when it says there will be devolution of power, and feed into the constitutional amendment exercise that the administration, that the National Assembly in particular, have been championing since 2015, which is almost near conclusion. Because what I see now is a kind of perpetual amendment of the Constitution. Recall that in June or thereabout last year, the National Assembly had already voted on the constitutional amendment, and they've rejected the devolution of power, which was what actually heightened the demand for this issue of restructuring, because everyone thought ab initio that the party and the National Assembly are on the same page about the issue of restructuring. And knowing full well that it is the agenda of the party, one didn't expect the National Assembly to vote against devolution of power. But it has happened, and now the amendments that were successful had moved on to the states, and the states are doing consequential voting on those ones, which in which devolution of power is not one of such. So what now happens is that the extant exercise will have to be concluded, and maybe when eventually the president deems it fit to sponsor the new bills that have been drafted by a El-Rufai committee as an executive bill, we will now see another round of constitutional amendment exercise.
Okay, now will we say that, given the fact that this was one of the campaign promises made by the All Progressive Congress to Nigerians, is it a fulfillment of a promise to Nigerians?
In a way, it is, but again, one will have expected the right thing being done at the right time. It's not even yet fulfillment. What they campaigned for was there would be devolution of power, not that there would be a definition. Because what they have done now is to define in their own understanding what the party meant when it says it was going to devolve power.
I suppose maybe it's like, oh, since we made this promise, this is the proposal we have. We tender to the National Assembly, which National Assembly is Nigeria in itself. So now that they have made the proposal, and you have said it's not a finality, which means they're on track. Am I correct?
They are on track, but they cannot count it as an achievement yet. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It's not yet an achievement until eventually there is that devolution of power taking place in reality. These are just still work in progress. It's still work in progress because first, there is no timeline. The party has not set a timeline for it to accomplish this devolution of power. Even when El-Rufai committee submitted the report, the chairman, that's governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, wanted the report to be published on the website of the party. But the chairman of the party overruled him and said, no, not so fast. This report still have to go through the organs of the party to get ratified before it's now possibly will be sent to the president to sponsor some of the draft bill. Because again, you know, the governance process is ever very slow. The bureaucratic processes is not something that you can put a timeline on so easily. I'm foreseeing a scenario where when eventually, and we don't know when eventually this recommendation makes its way to the president, he possibly will now send the bills to the Attorney General and Minister of Justice for his legal opinion to know whether it's something. And another angle to this whole thing is that given the body language of the president, which doesn't seem to be very excited on the issue of restructuring, given this January 1 New Year speech, one does not think the president will be very anxious or very quick to take actions on this. I foresee a scenario where all this issue of devolution of power and everything will still come up post-2019 elections.
Okay, but ultimately, one will say that they made a promise and they are on track with the promise. Are we together on that? Yeah,
they are on course, but they are not yet there.
Now, let's speak to the core issues now. It has always been there through federalism, although some people have given so many names. It started from restructuring, the party eventually set up a committee, and now it is called through federalism, devolution of powers. And most of the items they have raised here clearly tries to diffuse some strength from the federal level to the state. What do you say to this?
It's what the Nigerian public, majority of Nigerian masses have angled for. I have also been in the forefront of saying we can't continue with this kind of warped federalism that is over-centralized. We have about 66 items on the exclusive legislative list and barely 22 on the concurrent list. So you have a highly centralized federal structure. Now, many people, if you recall last year, were saying different things, and I've written my own layman's opinion on what kind of federalism, what kind of restructuring we should pursue. Some of them include this issue of state police that we are coming back to. Arising from this insurgency and insecurity all over, elders, farmers, conflict and everything, we have come to see the dire need to have state police. I like the idea that they are also proposing state court of appeal and state judicial council to deal with judicial officers within the state. You need to share those powers. The issue of resource control is also desirable. You know, that's what fueled the agitation in Niger Delta, that people want to control resources, their God-given resources in their state. Then the issue of referendum, that there should be a clause in the Constitution which allows for people who want to seek their self-determination to, for government to hold referendum, which is more like meeting the IPOP demand in a sense. So it's like there's something in it for every region. You understand? The South gets the resource control they want in that recommendation. The Southeast get the referendum to be able to get issue of self-determination if they want to pursue that. The state gets more revenue because there will be a review of the revenue sharing formula. Okay. You cannot devolve more powers to the state without having more resources anyway. Okay. Because right now the federal is getting 48%, the state's local government are getting 52%. So by and large, it's a warped way to run a federation. Then the issue of having two tiers of government, I think is also in a sense very desirable. Much as currently during the and this is where there is an overlap. You see, this is why I wish the APC has done this much earlier in their first year before the National Assembly gets to vote on constitutional amendment. Recall that the issue of independent candidacy that they are now supporting has already passed the Senate. It is now in the state. The issue of local government autonomy is already passed the National Assembly, is with the state. So now the party is just doing its own belatedly to say that, okay, we are supporting independent candidacy, we are supporting. Now the party is going at variance to the position of the National Assembly on issue of local government autonomy. Because what the National Assembly has done is to vote for local government autonomy as a third tier of government. But the RFI committee is saying no, that there should be two tiers of government, the federal and the state, and local government should be a subject of the state government, in which case all the names of local government that are listed in the Constitution should be excised, and local government should now be under the auspices of the state government. If it passes eventually, in which case every state will now be will now be at liberty to create as many local government as it wishes without having to look up to the federal government for resources to fund those local government. Okay. Then there is this very disingenuous recommendation on merger of state. I mean, why are we grandstanding? We knew that is not going to happen. It's not going to happen because more governors, more people.
But it ties on the premise of economic viability.
No. Yes.
Where maybe two states realizes that if we come back together, it will be better off, then they negotiate and go ahead with it.
My brother, do you foresee that happening in this country where people want to hold on to cluster of power? You think a state like Ebonyi you want to merge with Enugu? I mean, let's not deceive ourselves. It's just going to be a toothless bulldog. The best we can achieve under the current circumstance is extant to maintain the status quo ante, in which case we will have 36, but no more. But to say that any state, whether now or in the nearest future, we want to merge, although it's good, maybe in a sense, let it be in the Constitution, so that eventually, if there is a dire need for it, states can start working. After all, we do have a merger of parties. But merging parties is not the same as merging states. Because
but ultimately, would you say that, yes, truly, there's an involvement towards actualizing true federalism in Nigeria? Eventually? In
a sense, yes. But that's if there is a political way to achieve this. Because these 13 items will make the center less attractive and state more powerful. And people have expressed concern that without this devolution of power, the governors are already behaving like a lord of the manor, like an emperor. So if you give them more powers, are they not going to abuse it? Because now they are calling for state police, they are calling for state prison, they are calling for state court of appeal, they are calling for state judicial council. But look at what is happening in many states, even in terms of appointment of chief justices, chief judges.
But you have said that actually this is not a finality. It is not subject to a lot of reviews, adjustments, and what have you. So which means by the time it gets to the National Assembly, ultimately we may have maybe public hearings where may be either endorsed or expunged or modified.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about this,
Maybe
all of this is,
like
if it is done the way the National Assembly did the current constitutional amendment exercise, I think we may get some amendments through, but it may not be the entire 13 items. Because right now, learning from the fiasco of 2015, what the National Assembly has done with the constitutional amendment exercise now is that they separated them into bills, different bills. So if one bill fails, the entire exercise does not fail. I don't know whether you understand me. We can move on. So even among the 20 or thereabout items that were sent to the state for concurrence, let's assume that at the end of the day, it's only 10, 15 items that made. So those are the items that get amended in the constitution. Unlike before, where everything was in one bill. And because the former president refused to assent to that amendment, because according to the President Jonathan, it didn't meet certain basic procedures, like 4/5 of the National Assembly members were supposed to vote. They did voice vote instead of doing electronic voting, which there will be a count. Okay. You know, you can't do voice votes to determine how many people are in support. How do you determine percentage when you did a voice vote? So that was what made the last exercise to run into stormy waters, and thereby wasting billions of naira on that exercise. But what the National Assembly has done with this current exercise is that they take each of the bills separate. So if one fails, the entire exercise does not fail.
Naturally.
So if this El-Rufai committee report also follows the same sequence, let's assume that at the end of the day, they have about 7 or 10 bills out of these 13 items sponsored by the president as executive bills for amendment of the relevant section of the constitution. It may well be that it's not the entire bills that will survive, but some may survive, and that will enhance our constitution, make it more implementable and more believable.
Okay, naturally you have said that, well, the report has been submitted. It is going to go to a lot of checks and balances.
Definitely.
But it is, you said it's a work in progress.
It is.
So what kind of attitude should Nigerians be exhibiting towards this direction?
I think they should put APC's feet on the fire. We cannot afford to sleep on this, because for me, leaving this to politicians, it may end up being like Ken Nnamani committee report on electoral reform. Rather. Recall that in October 2016, the president set up Senator Ken Nnamani 24-member committee to look into electoral reform. The committee sat for about 6 months, submitted its report to the Minister of Justice in April last year. Unfortunately, that was the time the president traveled out for the second time last year on medical tourism. Since that time, nobody knew what has become of Senator Ken Nnamani's report on electoral reform. And I pray that this does not go in the same way, because now we are going into an era of politics. Electioneering for 2019. And I foresee a scenario where this whole restructuring will take a life of its own and may end up being another campaign promise. But I think the 1 year ahead of election, for a party that is very serious about delivery on its campaign promises for 2015, the National Assembly can still amend this in 6 months if they expedite actions on this. So it will be a promise made and promise kept. But knowing the party the way it is, one is not very optimistic that this will...
Is it about the party or is it about the legislature now? Because when
the legislature cannot come to the party to request for the amendment for the proposed bills. It has to be sponsored either as private member bill, which I don't foresee, or as executive bill, which is the more likely option. And given the body language of the president, which does not tend to believe in restructuring, and the fact that many of the northern governors are not...
the president is the leader of the party.
Not constitutionally. It's like an honorary award.
If a party which he went through to become president says this, will he say no to it?
again, given the benefit of hindsight, you know that even in the emergence of the leadership of National Assembly, when the party decided to take a particular direction, the rest of the National Assembly went the other way in terms of leadership.
Last word to Nigerians over this exercise.
For me, Nigerians should keep the issue of restructuring on the front burner. They should demand of APC for quick implementation of this report. For whatever it's worth, is a promise, and I believe there are merits in some of the recommendations. And for the good of those meritorious items, we should see actions taken in the very near future to make sure that ahead of 2019 we have all of this, we are able to put a close to it. So the most important thing is that this document should be widely circulated, should be made available, and action should be taken on it. The party leadership should have a dialogue with the president to say that this is the party position. Whether you as a person does not like it or you liked it, please, we want you to sponsor it. So that once we see quick actions on this, Nigerians will take them serious.
Okay. Mr. Jido Joe, Executive Director, Oja Development Consult. It was nice talking with you on Insight.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Up next on it.